Thank you for watching SABC News Prime Time. Now we take our attention to Burundi, where the country's Electoral Commission says that yesterday's presidential elections in the country went smoothly without any major problems or incidents. The Commission says that over 70% of the country's eligible voters went to the polls. All right, let's catch up with our contributing editor, Vuyomvoko, who's in Burundi, to tell us of the developments that have been taking place. Vuyo, thanks for joining us. Can you give us an update of what's happened today, the day after the elections? Counting has been carrying on. What do we know about the post-election phase?
Well, yes, indeed, Peter. We've just spoken to the chair of the Electoral Commission, who has told us that they are expecting, they think well over 70% of Burundi's voting population went to the polls yesterday. They also said, as you read earlier on, that the poll went without any major incident. And the reason for that qualification is because two policemen were found dead, as well as another civilian thought to have been a supporter of the opposition. And investigations are underway to sort of find out what actually happened there. So from what the Commission has just told us, we should expect the preliminary results to be announced on Friday, the Commission says. And the reason they're calling them preliminary results is because it is the Constitutional Court in this country that has to announce the final result. So for all intents and purposes, the final result will be announced on Friday. Peter?
All right, so we know that people voted and the results will be due in the next day or so. And most likely, President Nkurunziza will win his controversial third term. But I suppose that political steps are already afoot to try and form some kind of government of national unity. Sanctions are being threatened. The EU don't recognize this election, and it's a challenge for the African Union as well. What happens next, Vuyo?
If the conversations we had today with some of the major players is anything to go by, it looks like there is more trouble coming. Because on the one hand, even though the government has extended or says it is going to extend an olive branch, but from what the opposition is saying, it doesn't look like that olive branch is going to go far enough. For example, some of the leaders of the opposition are saying they are not going to settle for anything less. In other words, even a government of national unity is not going to satisfy them. What they want is a rerun of the election. Now, we don't know just how far they will be able to pursue that particular viewpoint because, and which is a point we made to them this afternoon, the EAC, the East African Community of Nations, has actually said that, has spoken about a government of national unity. They haven't spoken about a rerun of the elections. So from the onset, it looks like there's going to be lots and lots of problems. And of course, we didn't, that on the back of the fact that we don't know to what extent the ruling party, the CNDD-FDD, is going to be magnanimous or even generous to the smaller parties and say, and give them positions or positions of power or influence. So at the moment, as things stand, it looks like even those negotiations, whether they are about the government of national unity or about a rerun of the election, as the opposition says they should be, it's not going to be easy. Everything is going to be tough, and it looks like this country is going to be in for quite a period, quite a very serious and actually involved process.
All right, so I'm just trying to get a sense now about ordinary people on the ground, how they're feeling. 70 people died since April when the unrest broke out. And Médecins Sans Frontières says that people have been leaving Burundi into neighboring Tanzania at a rate of 1,000 people a day. What is the sense of people on the ground from where you've seen?
Well, it depends on who you're speaking to. I mean, the great majority of people are obviously, if the outcome of last month's parliamentary elections and what is expected of yesterday's presidential poll are anything to go by, the majority of people here seem to go with the government, and the government's position is that those that have been that have left the country left because some of them were involved in all sorts of wrong things that are unconstitutional, and that includes the opposition trying to depose President Pierre Nkurunziza. So as to whether really that is the dominant view remains to be seen. But there's a reality which cannot be denied, and that reality is that certain media outlets were shut down, including social media outlets. There is a reality of certain people within the ruling party, the CNDD-FDD, have had to leave the country because they dared to oppose President Pierre Nkurunziza's bid for a third term. There is a reality that other independent people, including the deputy head of the Constitutional Court, is out of the country today precisely because he couldn't agree with that position of the Constitutional Court that saw the court endorsing or actually saying President Nkurunziza should go ahead and stand for re-election for a third term. So there are all these problems which clearly are not going to be resolved anytime soon, even though from what the chairperson of the CNDD-FDD said, which is the party's number 2 behind President Pierre Nkurunziza, he said they are going to be speaking to their former members who differed with them. He did say that they will be speaking to all those forces that have left the country to ask them to come back. So we don't really know what is going to happen, and I think people are just going to have to hope for the best.
All right, Vuyo, that's where we're going to have to leave it. So the election may be done, but certainly this story is not over by a long shot.